today we're talking NFL roster rankings across the NFL. So we're going to break down the top 10, I think, and then maybe kind of do it similarly to how we did the quarterbacks. Who might we move around, or how do we weigh it? And then we're going to see where the Commanders are and obviously discuss how we feel about that. So you got
Yeah, we'll
anything,
get into a
Pablo?
little more detail on the Commander side. There's some interesting things. We're keying off this PFF article, so there's interesting things that they talk about, like X factors and rookies to watch, and what our strengths and weaknesses are. So we're gonna definitely bounce some of that stuff off on where we think the Commanders are and how do we, what would it take to kind of make that 27 into a 15-20 or 15-25 in theme of our podcast. We'll see.
100%. So let's get into it here with the San Francisco 49ers at number one.
See a
That
lot of that.
is that is obvious. That is obvious, right? You can't be mad at that one. Number two, Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes there. Not much you can say about that. Number three, the Philadelphia Eagles.
That one I
Four,
was a little surprised by.
yeah, that's high. That's high, but they're always great on paper. Four, the New York Jets, which I was also surprised by.
That one
Five,
I'm really surprised by.
five, you got the Baltimore Ravens, which I'm also surprised by, but for the opposite reasons. Six, the Detroit Lions. Seven, the Houston Texans. Eight, the Cincinnati Bengals. Nine, the Dallas Cowboys. And 10, the Buffalo Bills. So, from this top 10, Pop, where are your initial reactions? You said you were surprised by a couple of things. Why don't you break those down for the people?
Yeah, I was surprised, definitely. I was surprised to see the Eagles that high. I would have had probably slide the Ravens into that slot, personally. I think that when you talk about rosters, the thing is that do you have superstars on your team? Do you have someone like Lamar that can carry you to wins, pretty much on his own offensively? Who is that guy necessarily on the Eagles, right? Maybe with Saquon, the addition to Saquon, that offense could be a lot more dynamic than it was even before, which was pretty darn dynamic. The Jets, I guess you just kind of get so wrapped up in the Aaron Rodgers talk that you forget about how good their defense is.
Yeah.
And some of those
Skill
other
position.
elements that they have in the skill positions. Seeing that roster ranked that high gives me a little bit of pause with where my mindset is on the Jets for the season.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't hate the Jets that high, to be honest with you. It surprised me, but then when you really look at it, you have Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Malachi Corley, who they just added, Tyler Conklin, all solid in terms of receiving options there. And then you have Brees Hall at running back, who's the top probably three, maybe top five running back in the league projected for next year. And has shown incredible flashes. And that defense is just suffocating, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just fantastic. They've got the best cornerback in the game probably since the last great Jets cornerback in Sauce Gardner. That kid is just unbelievable. And they're great at safety. Their worst player in the secondary would improve Washington's secondary from last year by like 2 wins. Like they're loaded on defense. And the fact that the Jets have consistently won 6-7 games with the awful quarterback play that they've had from Zach Wilson and the rest of the cast over the last couple of years really shows, I think, how good they've been
Who's
on the
their
rest of the
backup
roster.
QB?
This year, I don't know. Mike White. Did they keep? No, he went to Miami. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure our might have to call in our Jets insider on that one. I have no idea. They might have drafted a kid to sit behind Rodgers. I think that's possible.
Yeah.
But I do think Philly at
Deshaun
But-
Watson's with the Browns.
sure as hell ain't Deshaun Watson.
It sure as hell ain't Deshaun Watson.
getting paid $64 million a year to sit behind. All right, I'm going to keep it moving here, Pop, while you're
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
up that
go,
very
go,
important
go.
nugget of information. Eagles at 3, I think, is exactly right. Honestly, I don't think that's too high. The roster's not the problem there. It's the coaching. It's the fact that they lost Shane Steichen. It's the fact that they lost the locker room last year. And it's the fact that Jalen Hurts might, who knows, might have been a little too fast to crown Jalen Hurts NFL MVP after 1 year. That's all I'm saying. Might be a
Yeah.
little fast. Might be a little fast for Hurts. I still think he's a great player, but I mean, this is an Eagles team that just continues. You want to talk about a great general manager and Howie Roseman? I mean, just continues to get better and better and better every offseason, and somehow without sacrificing everything. Obviously, they lost Jason Kelsey, so let's see how that offensive line
Yeah.
responds without the brain trust there at center. But that's a big piece there. Tyrod Taylor is the Jets' backup, and they did draft another young man. I know in like the
Yeah, yeah. Fifth round,
late
I think.
late round.
Florida State kid. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, the kid that he's actually good. He tore his ACL. That's probably why he fell
Yeah.
further. But Tyrod Taylor, Jets backup. So there you go. Pop got the answer for us. But yeah, the Ravens. I think initially this felt low, but the more I'm talking about it, here's my issue with the Ravens, man. They just lack at skill position. They lack at two really key positions, which is cornerback and wide receiver. And I think those are two of the top 5 positions in the NFL. You know they're going to be good in the trenches. Ravens are always good in the trenches. You know the defense is going to be solid. Ravens always have a solid defense. You know Lamar Jackson is going to stand on his head and make plays that nobody else in the NFL can make.
I don't.
Kyle Hamilton is
I mean,
obviously a
Mark
stud.
Andrews, Zay Flowers, Shad Bateman, and then you've
Bateman's
got the
awful.
combination of Derrick Henry and Jackson in the
Bateman is not.
backfield.
Bateman is not a good football player, Dad. Bateman is bad. Bateman
I
has
was
been a
trying to
late
just slide him. I
first
was trying to
rounder.
slide him in there.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is like, look, we live in the golden age of the wide
Receivers
receiver now.
specifically, but I mean, Mark Andrews is a weapon. He's
Sure,
a
yeah,
top five tight end.
Mark Andrews is maybe a top. Yeah, is a top 3 tight end when he's
Yeah,
healthy. He can't stay healthy. That's the problem with Andrews. But I think this is just about right. I don't think I can justify putting them above the other teams. The Jets' defense is better, just is. The Eagles just have more skill. I mean, when you're looking at AJ Brown, Devonta Smith as your wide receiver duo, those are 2 of the top 10 receivers in the league on the same team.
I got the Ravens 3. Just saying.
That's nasty. I think I'm not mad at that, but because of my concerns at receiver and corner that just you don't have with these other teams. Um,
But if we go
I
too quickly, I think the Lions at 6, a bit of a surprise. They're kind of considered by many
it's
top
about
2
right.
in the NFC.
Yeah,
Um, Houston at 7. Wow, you just said it, man. 3-13 to a playoff team. That seems high.
this one I don't like.
That
This one
seems
I don't
high.
like. I don't like
Yeah,
Houston at 7. I think it's just too high for them. I think this is a recency bias just because of how awesome Stroud has been, and this is just an amazing demonstration of how a star quarterback can elevate a team. Yes, Stroud has taken what would have been an abysmal team out of misery, and all of a sudden, Nico Collins is a household name now, right? Nobody was talking about Nico Collins before CJ Stroud went there. Now he's a household. So I think this is way too high for the Texans. Personally, they're great. They have some great players like Laramie Tunzel is great, but that left guard position is miserable. The rest of the line is very questionable. And then you look on their defense, and it's like Stingley has been okay, not great. Hasn't quite lived up to being drafted that high. Jimmy Ward is obviously a solid player. Jalen Peters is a solid
and
player.
you got teams like
But
the Dolphins, the
yeah,
Browns, who have a really good roster. Um, you know, just
the
outside the top,
Cowboys,
just
frankly,
outside 11 and 12. Green Bay Packers at 13. They've got a really good team overall. So yeah, it's interesting how they're doing these rankings. Even the Los Angeles Rams at 14, which would kind of round out the top 14 for the playoffs. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure about the Cowboys either. Number 9, like definitely a lot of talent on that roster. Giving credit where credit's due, but
yeah,
they didn't seem to do a whole lot It lost a couple pieces, didn't seem to do a whole lot to upgrade it. I think they're just kind of hanging on to that number 9 spot.
I actually think that's low for the Cowboys. I think my concerns about the Cowboys have nothing to do with the roster and everything to do about coaching.
Coaching.
Because all right, you lost Dan Quinn, who masterminded that whole thing. What does it look like there now? All right, yeah, that's pretty much my biggest concern with Dallas is what does it look like without
But you
Dan
talk
Quinn
about weapons,
running
right?
that
You got
defense?
CeeDee Lamb, big name, right? But they've
Yep.
got Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle noted as their starting running backs. Who's Rico Dowdle,
Yeah, but
right?
it's not.
After CeeDee Lamb, you got Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert as your wide receivers. Is this roster really that good?
CeeDee Lamb is a top 3
Lamb is
receiver in the
great,
league,
but
man.
he's the only one, and they don't have a running back.
I think. Well, look at the defense. You've
And
got
they
Micah
lost their
Parsons.
starting center.
You've got Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, DeMarcus Lawrence, Deron Bland,
They
like
got to score some points.
Malik Hooker. They've got a fantastic. They're going to score points. They're going to score points. They got Zach Martin at right guard. Like they've got
They're
a
not in my
good
top
team,
10.
man. They got
They're
a
not
good
in my
team.
top 10.
Jake Ferguson's a good tight end. That is a burgundy and gold take, not putting Dallas in the top 10 rosters in the NFL. That's just a straight burgundy and gold take, which I love. I can
I
never
think
be
that
mad at a good
offense is
burgundy and
weak.
gold take. You want to bet who finishes with more total offense this year?
No.
I don't want to root for the Cowboys, so I kind of don't want to do it. But I
No.
guarantee you the Cowboys will be top 5 in total offense this year. They always are. Let's move on. Let's talk Commanders. Speaking of burgundy and gold takes. So we wanted to key in on a couple parts from this article on the Commanders here. Specifically, we wanted to talk about what we think our biggest strength for 2024 is, our biggest weaknesses, and just kind of project. They talk about in this article, they talk about what the biggest strengths and weaknesses were last year. So we want to project what we think it's going to be coming up. So, Pop, what do you think our biggest strength of 2024 is going to be if you're projecting?
Yeah, maybe just to recap what PFF said there, just because we're kind of keying off of it, right? So for last year, they said that our biggest strength was our rushing offense.
Which is hilarious because we didn't run the ball. But
I
I
don't want to
agree.
just nuke the credibility of this article, but I'm not sure about that. But I guess they're just maybe projecting that Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez were bright spots when they got the chance to run the
And
ball. I
Antonio
don't know.
Gibson. Don't
It was
forget about AB.
hard to find a strength here. 15th, they were ranked 15th in rushing grade by PFF, yet we never ran the ball.
When we did run the ball, Pop, go back and watch the tape from our post game recaps. When we did
Yeah.
run the ball, we ran the ball super well. We just couldn't we just didn't do it.
Run defense they have as our biggest weakness, which is incredible to think if you think about,
Yeah.
what we thought going into the year. So, but you were asking me what I think our biggest. Which one do you want me to do first? Weakness, strength? I forget already.
You pick.
All right. For me, I think our biggest weakness is obvious. I'll do both real quick, and I'll let you do both. Biggest weakness is obvious. It's offensive line, right? That's the biggest concern. We rattled
Yeah.
off the depth chart there. I mean, if you just look through it and you think Cornelius Lucas is your starting left tackle, I like Cornelius Lucas. He's put in some good shifts for us, but he's a backup, and he's in his 30, 31. It's crazy to think that he's our best option at left tackle. I've heard of them maybe thinking about bringing Leno back, or there's some opinions out there that we should think about it. We need somebody else, I think, personally, as far as, adding some depth. Nick Allegretti, again, has been a backup yet for the Chiefs. The Tyler Biada's great pickup, I think, there. Sam Cosmi, a lot of people are really high on that. Andrew Wiley, wasn't great last season. So I think our biggest weakness is obvious. But I really like our front seven. Our biggest strength for me is our front seven on defense. I am really high on what we've done at linebacker. I won't rattle off the names. We've talked about some of these guys earlier, and I think edge is sneakily a lot better just in terms of the shift of guys that we can throw in there. I like Armstrong. I think Lillian Fairler was a former top 5 pick in the NFL. Clearly is some talent there. They've added enough guys there in the mix, and I think that rotation on defensive line is going to be really good. Potentially, borderline very good to elite in that interior if they ball out. And then we talked about linebacker with Luvu and Wagner and others. I think that front seven is our strength, personally.
Yeah, that's a good take. I think for me, I think the weakness of the team next year, you do have to say it's going to be the offensive line. Though I do think they will outperform
I agree with that.
expectations because I
I
think
agree with that.
more than Pop, we're not going to argue about it, but I weigh the failures of the offensive line a little bit more on the quarterback holding the ball and the scheme being bad rather than the actual players we dealt with last year.
I'd agree with that.
Personally,
I'd agree with that.
um, just because we saw under a different quarterback and a different
You let the
scheme, a lot of
defense
those
pin
same
their
guys
ears
be hurt.
back and rush you and didn't allow the offensive line to attack. So I
Yeah.
completely agree with that statement.
Yeah, I
Completely
mean
agree.
Trent Williams is going to struggle under that circumstance. Like you can't, you're putting guys in bad positions. You've got a quarterback out there who can't identify protections. You've got a center who's not helping him identify protections. Disaster, just a disaster. Um, so, anyways, I do think you have to say offensive line. Like that's the chalk answer. I do worry about cornerback as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be next on the list.
I don't know that you have an alpha in that secondary. And that makes me really uncomfortable. Now, the reason why I'm not picking cornerback as what I think will be our biggest weakness is because we do have the two defensive back whisperers historically in the NFL with Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn at the helm, and they have made much more out of much less in their careers. So I think you might see a guy like Derek Forrest end up with 6 interceptions by the end of the year. You might see a guy like Quan Martin turn into the heart of the
Michael
defense.
Davis.
You might see a guy like Michael Davis take the next step. So I have a little bit more faith in what the coaching can do to make up for that lack of name brand. I think said it. I'm planting my flag. I think Benjamin St. Juste is going to be a guy that we're talking about having to re-sign next year. We got to keep Benny St. Juste in the building. I'm planting my flag. I think that's how we're going to feel.
And let's hope. I mean, I think we're all really down on Emmanuel Forbes for good reason. But
Yeah.
let's just hope that he was projected first round pick. We picked him a little higher than most people thought. There were other options at that spot that maybe you go back and think. But let's hope. I'm not overly optimistic. I've got to see it. But let's hope this coaching staff can get first round talent out of Emmanuel Forbes.
I'm going to stay optimistic with you and not talk about why the Emmanuel Forbes projected first round draft pick thing really grinds me because it's just not the whole picture. And it's a very burgundy and gold take, but I'm good to keep
I'm just
it moving.
going off what I read on the internet. It can't be wrong.
He was a projected first round pick because you thought Christian Gonzalez was going to go like number 8 overall. The quarterback position got punted all the way down the draft board in that draft. He was not supposed to get drafted ahead of the guys he got drafted ahead of. Anyways,
doesn't change the fact that he was projected first round pick before the draft. Later in the first round.
He was not a projected first 5 cornerbacks off the board, and he was the second.
The Emmanuel Forbes podcast will be a couple episodes
next week.
From now.
Yeah, keep it moving. So biggest pop. Remember when we said this episode was going to be only 30 minutes in the setup?
No chance.
No shot. We'll be here for another 20.
More for the biggest, people. More for the people.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. This is always fun to be on here chopping it up. So we talked about our biggest weakness. Now, what do we think our biggest strength is going to be next year? You said front 7. I don't think I gave mine. I'm going to go ahead and say I think it's going to be the skill positions. I think it's going to be our weapons.
I like that.
I think it's going to be our biggest strength. I think Zach Ertz might surprise people. And don't get me wrong, I think surprise people for Zach Ertz is like 780 yards and like 4 touchdowns. But I think he still has something left. I think Eckler has something left. And I think he's going to surprise people as well. And I also think Jahan Dotson, if Jahan Dotson is the guy, is who we thought he was, and he shows us, this offense is going to explode. And I think
But
the skill position players are going to get to really eat off that.
my only question about Eckler and Ertz are strength. I think those two guys got something that you really love to see. They got a chip on their shoulders. They got that battery sitting there. That's a '70s
Yep.
reference for your old heads like me. They're daring people to knock it off. You know, if you know, you know. You have no idea what I'm talking about. We're not going to
That
go
was
there. But no,
20
I think they
years
got a
before I
chip on
was
their
even a
shoulder.
twinkle
I
in
think
your eye.
those guys feel like people are writing them off, and I think they're going to both be. And I tell you what, we're going to get there on wins predictions. But if that skill position team, which I'd love to hear from you as a strength, there's no way it's less than 6.5 wins.
Well,
If that
and
comes true, there's no way it's less than 6.5 wins.
and we're taking out the obvious answer here, right? Because if I do say skill positions are the greatest strength, well, who's throwing the ball to the skill positions? It's going to be Jane Daniels. He had a good year, and obviously he's going to be the best thing about the team. We're
And
taking that out
speaking
of
of
it.
that, X factor in this article is Jaden Daniels. Just move us along a little bit here.
Yeah, keep
I
it
think
going.
that's an easy one. It's Jaden Daniels, right? He's the X factor. I think we got to
Obvious.
agree with that. Yeah, there's not
Obvious.
going to be
Yeah.
any argument there.
No
Right?
two ways about that
And
one.
that
Jane
makes a
Daniels,
lot of sense
100%.
because we're going to probably go as far or as not as far as he takes us. I mean, obviously, other guys got to step up. They got to play well. We can't depend on him to put us on back and be Superman here. We can't. If we try to
Yeah.
attempt that, that's a high risk move. And I don't think this coaching staff is going to do that. But
Yeah, I as well agree. I think it's definitely Jaden Daniels is the X factor that's just, I mean, Jaden Daniels will determine single-handedly how we're feeling about this team at the end of the year. It just is reality. It's just the reality of the situation. I don't know, unless Sam Hartman's the next Brock Purdy, but God forbid. you
Slinging
know what?
Sammy's
You know,
still alive. I don't hate it as our backup.
Sammy Ball just rolls over in his grave every time you say singing Slammy, and you
Yeah, it's
refer
fair.
you refer
That's
to these
fair.
guys. I mean, the greatest Washington football player ever. Anyways, what else we got here, Paul? The X Factor. So some rookies that we want to keep an eye on. This is a good time for my Brandon Coleman take. If Brandon Coleman can start at left tackle, Cornelius Lucas is a swing tackle. You can bump him out to the right, and he can get Wiley's ass off the field. Or if you need help at left guard, you can put Wiley in at left guard. I think if Brandon Coleman is the number one rookie to watch on this team, because if he's ready to start and if he emerges as even just a top, 8 to 15, even if he's just in that 8 to 15 range of left tackle, he is going to cure such a big
So
problem for this team.
Brandon Coleman is your rookie to watch. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. That's
Okay.
the biggest rookie to watch for me.
I think in terms
Other than
of
Daniels, of course.
if he hits, that would be the biggest story if he hits, right? I mean, I agree with you there. But I think Brandon Coleman is still a developmental piece. My reality in terms of just being realistic about a Brandon Coleman pick and the number of offensive tackles that went in front of him in this draft is I think he's got a lot of that, the measurables that you want to see, but I think he's a developmental piece. My rookie to watch now, PFF picks Johnny Newton, which you can't hate. If he's healthy, I think he's a first round talent.
Yeah, I spoke
It's
about him
going
a
to be
lot.
big for us. But I would go with Sanistro, Mikey Sanistro, because I think got to remember Nick Saban saying pound for pound he was the best player in this draft. We talked about the need at cornerback, and we didn't even talk about Mikey Sanistro. I think this guy is a baller. I heard Dan Quinn in a film breakdown, some of the shows that the Commanders put out on YouTube, which are great to watch, talking about Mikey Sanistro and that he's what we want in a commander. Just this toughness, but his ability to also to guard, tight ends as well as some skill position guys at the receiver position. I think he's going to be the guy we're talking about the most. So it's a prediction when it comes down to, in terms of rookies. I'm really high on what we can get there, and that could be a huge boost to our secondary.
Yeah, I agree. I think he could really take that next step. I've got my eyes more on Quan Martin and Benny St. Juste right now, just because I've seen what they can do, and I want to see if we can make the most of it. Especially St. Juste, just the physical tools there that you have with him, with his size and his speed. But we'll have to see, man. I think it's going to be good. I do think I think you're a little low on Brandon Cole, but we'll see. But
I'd love to
anyways,
see it. I think he's got great talent. I'm just not sure it's ready for prime time.
he was playing through. He had a year similar to Jonathan Allen last year, where he was kind of playing through one of those nagging injuries that like wasn't enough to take him off the field, but was enough to really not make his performance so great. And he was much better the year before.
If a guy that is a starting left tackle in the NFL for this year slipped to the third round, or was it second round? Was he picked in the second? Third, fourth. I mean, there's a
Happens
lot of
all the
GMs
time.
are going to have a lot of explaining to do. I find it just hard. It just feels like a reach to me.
Best football player to ever live went 199.
Was he the best football player that ever lived in year one?
Became that very quickly, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good.
I
I
hope
hear
you're
you.
right. I
I
hope
hear
you're
you.
right.
Hating on the boy. I
I'm not
think
hating on him.
that's
I'm
and
not
we're
hating on him. I think he's more of a developmental guy.
we're talking about rookies to watch because I think that's what could have the biggest impact if he hits right away.
I
That's my
respect it.
take. Anyways, let's move on here. Talking the over under win total. PFF I think took under. They did take under. I'm looking at it now.
Brandon Coleman was round 3, by the way.
It must have been our last pick in round. It was probably a
First
top
pick in
pick.
round 3.
All right, well, good for
Yeah.
you. I forgot. Even better then. Over under win total. PFF takes us under. They said while it wouldn't be surprising to see the Commanders approach or even surpass this win total, they are still starting a rookie quarterback and need immense improvement on defense.
Under 6.5. Yep.
This season is more about Daniels and the rest of the rookie class progressing than it is about any number of victories. I fully agree with that sentiment. I do think I'm just a little bit more optimistic about Daniels progressing, but I think that 6.5 number is just about right. Now, here's something interesting. Do we see that 6.5 number move? I'm taking over for the record right now. You put that number at 7.5, now it
Yeah.
starts to get weird. So, do we see that number move as training camp goes and as some preseason games go, and as we start to see Jaden Daniels in a Commander's uniform?
I think this team exceeds expectations this year, but slightly. I think it's
Yeah.
7 to 8 wins. I'll stick with that. That's what I've been saying all along. It's banking on, I think, more so than any other reason, that's due to coaching. Because I think you've got, talent there. You talked about Brandon Coleman, of course, Jaden Daniels, and some of these other rookies that we're really high on. I think they're going to get coached up. They're going to get coached up properly. They're going to be a run-first team. They're going to be a very physical defense. And you said it, late in the season, they're not going to be a team, health permitting, that people are going to want to play. So I'm going to say over.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going over as well. Although I do think even if they only win 6 games, I think everything that you said just may not materialize in wins and losses quite yet. And I kind of don't care, but I do think they will
No,
win
the
more than
wins and
6.5
losses are
games.
less important this season than the process and the
Yeah.
development and what you see and how competitive the team is. You don't want to see what we saw at the end of last year, where they just weren't competitive at
And you
all.
know what? Not to be this guy, but you win 6 games and you pick number 8, there's probably a pretty good left tackle you can get
Not better than number 8, according to my math
there.
earlier.
Better at number 8 than in the third
No, I
round, right?
said
If you
better
need
than
it.
number 8.
Oh,
Yeah.
better than number 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
true. I guess that would put us at like
6 or
6 or
7.
7.
Yeah.
But, anyways, what do you say we wrap this thing up, Pop? Our
Let's
famous, we
do it.
can get it done in under 30 minutes, and here we are an hour later podcast.
More content for the people.
Yes, sir. It's always fun. We love chopping it up with you guys. Guys, don't forget about the subscriber giveaway. It'll be the chapter will be down at the bottom, so go back, watch that, watch the whole episode again while you're at it. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the pin comment for the giveaway details. Let's wrap this thing up. I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thanks for another great week, everybody.